Hey, what's up, universe? It is 10:10. That was not intentional. It's 10:10 a.m. on, Tuesday, June 6, 2023. I've had a couple people reach out to me and wonder what's going on from the last video, and I appreciate that. So, if you don't mind, if you would like to journey with me for a little bit, I can give you the context around this. It's going to be probably a little bit longer of a video because there's a lot of story. You know, that's what makes up the meaning, right? So let me introduce you a little bit to some of the data that I received last night and that I received again this morning because it's still present. I'm in my bathroom. Okay, hold on. And it's gonna be pretty light. I don't know if you can see here, 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 and here, and over here, here, here. Right here. That's not light. And I'm just kind of deciding what else to share around that, because there's a lot. There's a lot of history, a lot of context, a lot of story. We'll just say there's some experience with that within the context of like my youngest son, so this isn't necessarily the first time. There's also my own personal experience. How's that for being vulnerable? I was trying to think of how to thread this all together. In a way, I feel like I need to give this some context, and I feel like I need to talk a lot about myself when this isn't everything to do about me. But since you're watching me and experiencing or sharing my experience, I feel it's important to contextualize myself. So because of that, I have to talk about myself for a little bit. So relevant pieces of data, I believe, to this story are that I've gone to counseling, and I would have never have told you that I grew up with childhood emotional neglect. So I'm just going to put that out there, that's a piece of data about me to contextualize some of my experience, especially before being aware of that. Like, I was never aware of that. I'm an empath as well, which blew my freaking mind when I found that out. It explained my entire life, and it's a legitimate thing. I think I may have mentioned this in a number of videos a long time ago. Empaths are a real thing. It's biological, actually, and there's about 20% of any animal population, or at least over 100 species, is biologically wired this way. All of this stuff actually plays a huge role in my whole life experience, including the identity that I created for 44 years. That was the nice guy. And there's so much. And being a creative and an artist because I'm an empath, and I have that connection I have a deep connection emotionally. I just never saw myself as a creative. And let me tell you why, kind of how this all started. There's a memory that I have as a child. I was probably about 5. And, I was totally exploring myself, having a good time with what I had found. I remember the energy, and again, when I tell you guys this story, I'm not blaming anybody, okay? There's no blame here. I'm not feeling a charge. This is data for context, strictly. And so, the way that my mom had responded to me exploring that part of myself, I still remember, like 40 years later almost. And it's just to me, that just is an example of one of these things where it's like, you never know what you do or say and how it's going to land with somebody. You never fucking know, man. And that's part of the thing with this, is that I don't blame my mom, because she could not get inside of my head and change how I thought or felt about something. She can't. She's not me. There's no way I can get inside of her head and change what she's thinking or feeling. And so I mention that because to me that illustrates the responsibility around meaning. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely received stories from my mom and my dad that neither one of them intended to have it mean what I made it mean. Like they would have never have given that definition to me. Yet I'm the one that defined it that way. And that's exactly what's happening here with me and Milo. So, I'm trying to figure out how to tie this all together. There's a story, like, to illustrate that point that I just spoke about, because this is relevant. There's a story that my mom would tell. And it wasn't even like a super long story. It was more like a sentence or two. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like this huge long thing. And basically, I've got my mom was married to another man before she married my dad. And my dad passed in 2011, just so everybody knows. Which is super interesting as well, given the context of right now, the time of the year, astrologically speaking, a whole bunch of things. So I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, my mom had, I have 2 sisters. And when my mom became pregnant with me, my oldest sister was 10, my middle sister was 7. My mom was around, I don't know how old, maybe early 30s or something like that. And her and my dad weren't married yet, this kind of a thing. And to contextualize that culturally speaking, back in that time, and, the type of judgment women would have, and all of this kind of thing, like, I really understand, and I can appreciate, I don't understand because I'm not my mom, but I can appreciate how those inputs and how that pressure, how that may have, made her feel inside or impacted her internal state. And so what she would communicate is that for her, it was a pretty difficult piece of data to become aware of. Like, shit, I'm pregnant, And the way that was expressed was that she didn't want me, right? She was scared. She was, it was just something that she was like, wait, huh? Now again, like, I'm sure my mom probably finessed it better than that. She may not have even used those words. It's possible. Yet, obviously, you just heard my version of the story. Right? You heard the words that I use. And then, on my dad's side, he wasn't a wanted child. His father straight up told him. My dad had an older brother who passed early. And my dad's dad, I never really met my dad's dad, like my grandpa on my dad's side. And I never met the grandpa on my mom's side either. Both of them passed. I mean, my dad's dad, I think I met when I was like 5, maybe 6. I kind of remember one visit, maybe, and it almost seems like a memory I'm making up. I never had a relationship with either one of these men, is basically what I'm trying to get at. So anyhow, my dad's dad told my father that the only son he had died. And so my dad was told, pretty much in no uncertain terms, that he was an unwanted child. Now, I don't know for a fact, but like what all my mom was told from my grandma. I've heard stories about my grandma who's passed as well, and I can truly only imagine what that childhood would be like. I really can only imagine what my mom's childhood was like. So there's 2 pieces of data coming into me, right? That neither one of my parents really, I don't think, experienced a lot of like, hey, like I want you in my life kind of a thing. Or it wasn't a pleasant experience that really just engendered what we see on television and other cultural significations of what a family unit may look like. Now, I know that's changed over the years. Things have gotten quote unquote more real on the television and all of that, but yet when we display these things, they're not in a healthy way still. So I give you this context because and I shared this in a group before, and this is awful. I mean, not what I just shared to you, but it's awful to illustrate passing down generational energy and patterns. When Angela and I had Odin, we had always talked about having one kid. And you guys don't know me back then. And after we had Odin, Angela wanted to have another baby. Now, it won't matter, honestly, the context, like where I was at. I mean, it'll explain things, but that doesn't change my responsibility towards my energy. I was freaking out about the world. I was losing my shit. And I was scared of the world. And the thought of bringing another child into the world freaked me out. And being the people pleaser and doing what I thought was right, from a space that wasn't really honoring my truth and was really out of integrity with myself in a way. We had Milo. And you could probably already tell some of the energy, right? There was a time when Milo was really, really, really young, under a year. And I had laid him down in the seat of a chair. And I don't remember what the trigger was. I don't. I just remember being really triggered. the things that I said, and not just said, the energy that was present when I expressed myself, that I directed towards this infant, this baby. And you guys don't know. I mean, some of you may have experience with, like, you know, the look, or when there's like fear is meant to be inspired, like death may be the consequence from our parents, right? Or maybe our mom. That's how it was for me, right? If one is out of line, then the look will put you back in line, kind of a thing, right? Well, there's a real energy that goes along with that. And I don't believe that anybody deserves to receive that. I don't. I mean, again, that's part of that real destructive, like, energy, and it obviously exists. It has its place. I just, not there. Not like that. And so that was me imprinting that upon Milo. Like, indelibly. I'm sure he can't consciously remember it. Oh, but his subconscious does. And I've done that to both of my sons. Not said those things, but I have absolutely showed up. And I haven't, not just to my sons, to my partners, to my friends. So I've said before in a previous video, I've destroyed things. So with that kind of context, as we move into the now, I was playing a game last night with Odin, and Milo comes up, and he had just come from the bathroom. It was obvious he needed and was seeking my attention. And so I immediately stopped playing the game. And a whole lot of unknown came up for me. What do I do? Because there's these echoes of my relationship with my mom. Like, Milo's not open to receiving me. He doesn't want to hear anything from me. Although I know he does listen, even when he doesn't want to. And I learned that he doesn't want to talk to me about it because he's tried that before. And there was a time, probably 6-7 months ago, where he tried to do that, and I became triggered. Although I would love to give myself some credit that it wasn't like previous times because of the work I've done. And that's all part of this thing that's going on, is that, for me, I'm not the same person. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And so in a way, I'm seeking external validation. I'm seeking acknowledgement from my son to say, hey, I'm trying. Also acknowledging that that's outside of me. Like, I can't control that. What if I never get that? what does that mean for me? Am I gonna allow that to fuck with my state all the time? Like, it's a real motherfucker. It's a real motherfucker practicing this. Because obviously, I really would love to control this data. I would really love for it to be a certain way. So Milo is not comfortable expressing to me what's going on with him. And I get it. That's totally legit. I can validate that. I can honor that. I get it. And then what comes up, of course, is my responsibility towards contributing to that. And there's all sorts of data happening in tandem at the same time. It's never, ever just a single point. And I was looking to find a way to illustrate the intersections of these things, because that's how it works. That's the tapestry. These vibrations create these things. And by the way, that amplitude, right, to knock us off our base, there's coaches, Tony Robbins, Jim Fortin, other people, like whatever, other coaches will use what they call pattern interrupts to take us out of our normal baseline because we might need to reevaluate something. So being off base isn't a bad thing all the time. It's not good nor bad. And sometimes it's quite necessary to gain a new perspective. So I spoke with Milo, and I was like, okay, because I'm grasping, I'm trying, I'm asking questions, and I'm being mindful of the energy, because the thing that I learned in college is it's not what you say, it's how you say it, which to me speaks to the vibration and the energy, the presence, the groundedness, all of that stuff, the safety. So I was working to be very neutral in a way, grounded, present during this conversation with Milo last night. And I try to ask questions, and I get some answers and I don't on some other things, which is frustrating in a way. That can start to trigger me too, because I'm like, look, like I'm trying here, and this isn't a vacuum, right? Like, it's not just me. Like, I need participation. I need the other side of this equation to show up. And it's not that he wasn't showing up. I'm obviously like, I'm having a response to his response. And it's not that his response is invalid. I just am finding myself having a very difficult time working with it all. Like, if I can't receive information, then I am a little lost. I don't know what to do. Everything is speculation at that point. And pardon me if in this context I would really rather not speculate. So I was like, okay, well, I was like, I get it. There's a fear about how I might respond. And I'm thinking, how can I create this safety? How can I receive data and have Milo feel safe? And I was like, he loves to write. And this came up for me too earlier today. And I think I mentioned it yesterday about connecting with Milo and his writing and his creative expression. And I think this is why connecting with music and playing music with him, instruments, like, I was like, yeah, because it's that creative expression that I felt was shut down by my mom. And not all of me being an artist to life, like my art, my choices, my expression has never been something that my mom has accepted or promoted or enjoyed. It's never been that. There's been ridicule. There's been other just very heavy negative experiences that I've had around that. So that's why when I was making the connection around my own creativity and me being an artist and being like, oh, this is where Milo gets it. And then I was like, fuck, like, I need to connect with him on his creativity. Like, this is a really important thing because I didn't get that. Yesterday, in the middle of the day, this stuff started happening and I was like, okay, you know, and I was working with that. And then later at night, this data came from Milo and I'm like, fuck, man, like, you know, I'm working on this. So it was just interesting, the timing. I'm trying to get back to where I was with all of this. Yeah, it was just about connecting with Milo and his creativity. And so yeah, right, the safety. So I asked Milo, I was like, maybe you'd rather write it, you know, write it out and let me read it. And then that way, you know, I can read it in private. I can go through my own process with it. You don't have to worry about me having a certain response with it, you know, that kind of a thing. Or I was like, maybe an audio journal. I was like, maybe you want me to hear you say it. Maybe you want me to feel that emotion, that maybe you want me to just really know. And I was like, that, I'm available for that. And that's what I told him a couple of weeks ago before I went to San Francisco. And that was that crazy conversation that just happened very organically. And I made myself available then too. And that's part of my frustration, is that I don't feel like my mom's ever made herself available legitimately to receive anything that I have around my own wounding, the things I would like to talk about, the things that I would like to explore. And that's why I use phrases like expressions and experiences, because I'm aware that my experience of something may not at all reflect the quote unquote truth. My experience, the meaning I gave things and what it created in my life, like the whole thing with my mom telling me that she didn't want me. Like having that conversation, I was able to have that conversation with my mom and to just let her know what I had created in my own life. I wasn't doing it to blame her or to put it on her or to burden her with that emotion. It was simply to relate, to be like, hey mom, like this is, if you want to know your son and you want to know what my life has been like, let me tell you what I did with that story. Let me show you how I integrated that into my tapestry of life, because that's real. I'm not saying it's what you meant to have happen, mom. I'm just saying it's fucking real. Like that happened. I made it happen. I'm responsible for that. And so just understanding how that would feel to me if my mom was to be open and available. I'm like, fuck yeah. So I'm like working my ass off to give that to Milo. And it's admittedly it could be really triggering to not have that received. He's not interested. He's like, whatever, man. Because he doesn't trust me. I've changed a lot. I've made a lot of choices. I've been very fluid, very dynamic. Angela would say unstable. Choose a word that describes something that is not static. And that's me. And when we study the brain, we find out the brain loves patterns, the brain loves certainty, the brain loves surety. It doesn't have to spend as many calories figuring things out because there's a steady pattern, there's an expectation, there's a safety in that. And part of the reason I do what I do is it's like, yeah, you know what's fucked up about the brain is that life is anything but static. And so what you're seeing with this is my whole probably wound and rage against the machine of our model of how we approach life and how we interact with our reality and how we, in our relationship to our brain. Because I believe that I wasn't taught to be the master of my own meaning, and I was not taught the importance of the responsibility of my life. Being the master of myself. Instead, just blaming everything else outside of me for my own experience. I'm not blaming Milo. I'm not blaming my mom. Are you kidding me? Like, I know what I've done. I know how I've shown up. I have empathy. I have compassion. I can see things pretty well. I can feel things. Every day I can tell there's something with Milo that he would love to speak to me, but he chooses to not. And his choice is valid for him. I'm not going to say he's right or wrong. It is a choice, though. And being 14, going on 15, he's not quite aware of his own responsibility, and yet that's a real rub too, right? I mean, that's a lot of burden for anybody, regardless of your age. It's a lot of responsibility. So it's triggering for me, right? To be the adult and be like, oh, here's my responsibility. I'm supposed to take ownership. I'm supposed to be responsible. Yet there's another side of this equation, and that individual doesn't want to be responsible. And then, of course, I have to ask myself, what is that reflecting back to me? Where am I not being responsible? Oh, man. It seems like there's a lot more to say, but I'm also feeling like I'm hitting a dead end right now, if you want to know the truth. I sent Angela some texts last night. Oh, sorry, there is to go along with that. So Milo, when I mentioned the writing it out or doing an audio journal, he's like, I've already got it written up. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so he sent me what he had written up. It was pretty long. Very well written. Kid's an artist. Yeah. He's not too fond of me. There's a lot of wounding. There's a lot of wounding. I've been the face and the avenue, the channel, the cause, the source, the prompt. I've been a lot of data for a lot of wounding for Milo. And I imagine probably for Odin too, if you want to know the truth. Odin obviously chooses to express himself differently, although I would be lying to you if I don't see some things that I am quite certain that I've done to contribute. I've told my kids for a long time that, hey Mireya, I've told my kids for a long time that I know that I'm contributing to their baggage. It's kind of the way that it works, right? Inevitably, as best laid plans, as hard as I may try, as much work as I may do, there's always going to be something, and that's because, again, I can't get inside of their head and make things mean what I intend them to mean. I can try my best, yet that's where the responsibility comes in, right? Like, I can't define that for them. That's on them. That's their responsibility. And it's a real fucking pain in the balls. If you would like to know the truth. Sorry, I'm working on. There was another piece. And if I can't catch it right now, it's okay. I just know it'll be a follow-up video. It'll be like, oh yeah. Yeah, I think I'm losing it at the moment. Yeah, there's something. I know there's something there. Sorry, everybody. I appreciate you allowing me to have the space to just sit for a moment. I'm trying to decide what to speak to because there's some things that could come up. Yeah. I believe I'm probably just gonna have to sit honestly with this for a minute and come back. Yeah, otherwise I'm just gonna sit here for a long time. And none of this is funny. I totally believe humor is used as an ointment for pain. A salve that I don't know, something that we put over the wound. Some type of dressing, some type of makeup. And this is part of the reason I'm doing these videos is because, like, yeah, I practice these things. I'm grounded and centered a lot of time. I have a certain set of technical skills that allow me to do certain things. I have certain experiences with the property in the house, this, that, and the other. And this is where we have, like, those posts on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook where it's like, be kind, because you never know what somebody's going through. And thing is that I know for a fact I'm not the only one that's had to deal with this stuff. I know. I'm not. I'm not. Usually these things are talked about in private, or, they're not shared, this kind of a thing. Like, oh, I've been suicidal. My youngest son is totally going to therapy. Like, how many people put this stuff out there? Like, and this is like, I'm not airing dirty laundry. I'm not. These are the types of things that, like, these things that are considered taboo or unbecoming or just kind of like very, very personal, very private. And it's kind of like, I'm asking the question of, like, is that a good idea? Is that a good idea for sex and suicide and for, these kinds of relationships? Is it okay for these, like, is it healthy? Is it healthy? Is it healthy as a species to keep some things that are, like, so real, so fundamental, so a part of so many people's lives? Is it healthy to keep that private? Is it healthy to not have, like, what as a society are we bringing back? How as a society and a culture are we relating to these things? And I think you can start, I'm like, I can get triggered about that. Like, I'm very animated. Like, there's so many things that I can feel around this that come up. I can feel guilt and shame around my own contribution to the experience with me and my son. I can feel rage and anger around my own wounds. I can feel complete distaste for our species because of how we treat each other and how we choose to be irresponsible towards each other. And of course, these are reflections of my own internal imagery and my own experience. And to work through these things, which is exactly why in the very first video that I put on Instagram about this was that I'm working on believing that our species is not so fucking dangerous. And I believe it's dangerous to leave these things unexplored. Like outwardly, openly. Like they're explored, but it's up to each individual. Like, oh, I've got a trauma, I've got something I need to work on. I'm suicidal or whatever. I'm gonna go talk about this in private, and I'm not gonna bring it out because there's a lot of fucking fear of judgment. There's a lot of fear around all sorts of whatever, and that's all valid. That's valid. That's a valid concern. It's a valid response. I'm not the reason that's valid is because those things exist. It's true. Is it healthy though? As a culture, on a species level, is this healthy? I don't believe so. I don't believe it is. And so this is why I'm my own open source project in a way. Here it is. This is this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Except for there's no good and bad. It's just here's the aligned, the misaligned, and here's the journey. The journey can look really beautiful, and it can also it can appear very, 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 very ugly. Although that's why I've been doing what I've been doing, right? Where is the beauty? Where's the reconciliation in this paradox? Where's the healing? And with Reese, this is how it would work. We would have these extremes, these polarizing experiences. We'd hurt each other, not intentionally. We always found a way to reconcile. Now, if you're here with me this far, and this random thing, some of you may wonder, well, what the fuck happened between you and Reese? How can you have these things? What happened? This right here was I found personally that I couldn't harvest my gold with Reese without hurting myself all the time. And that's not Reese's fault. And it made it... She never knew when she may bring something up for me, so it was like walking on eggshells for her. So it wasn't a pleasant experience all around necessarily all the time for her either. So many lessons, so much healing, so much gratitude for all of the experiences that I've had with Reese. It's like strip mining, there's a finite resource, and eventually, even with strip mining, you've got to damage the earth to get to that gold, right? It's not that the earth won't heal, but you're gonna do that all the time everywhere, and you kind of get the idea. I couldn't find a way to harvest it without dying some way, and that's probably the point. There was so much transformation, literally pieces of me needed to be reborn again, and it got to be too much. And so I desire so much to see in the world and with my son, with all of my relationships, the same capacity within myself to reciprocate, to be able to facilitate that kind of relationship, that kind of healing with the people that I have a relationship with. And I would love to do that with Milo. And the thing is, though, is it takes both of us. Like, the thing that was awesome is that Reese and I participated together. We worked together. It wasn't, neither one of us could do it alone, because it was the relationship that we were working on. It wasn't just ourselves, it was the relationship. And so I would love to do that with Milo. I can't do it alone. So, anyway, this is a really long live, and I've got no idea. Oh shit, it's been 45 fucking minutes, because I started at 10:10, and it's 10:55. Holy shit. Wow. All right. Well, thank you for being here. And Mireya, you've been here for quite a while, so thank you. And I don't know the answer to your question that you asked. How come I'm having this, or how come you are having this breakthrough? I don't know. I don't know yet. I'm sure I'm going to be back with another video. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for journeying with me. Thank you for sharing this with me. Honestly, it's a big deal. Thank you for our relationship. Thank you for sharing this. Because this is, when it's put out there, people receive this, like, you're choosing to be a part of this with me. That's a big fucking deal. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I love you guys.